Kim Beng joins us now from Kuala Lumpur. Thanks very much for being with us. Now, China has been through a tremendous economic transformation in the latter part of those 75 years, but it's going through some tough times right now, as we mentioned a bit there. What do you see as the biggest economic challenges, and is the government right now up to fixing it?
Well, the government is definitely trying its best. Belated as it may be, it has actually injected $1.3 trillion into the GDP. But that's a very good move. It's better late than never. Now, having that been said, it's also very important to understand that with the adoption of capitalism as its market mechanism, China would invariably go through peaks and valleys over a long stretch of time. And to the degree that it can actually resurrect itself from any valleys that it has dropped into, Chinese economy will be functioning not unlike those in OECD. So looking ahead, China has to be aware that the state has to remain extremely strong and competent, and the industrial policy has also been sufficiently strategic in order not to waste away any state subsidies.
And China has also been asserting itself a lot more in the military and political sphere, certainly within Asia, but also recently more globally as well. What do you make of that?
Well, if we go according to the scholarship of one professor named David Shambaugh in George Washington University, then what you just described is actually a very typical demonstration of a partially global China. In other words, China is expanding outward, but at the same time, China is very much aware that its dominant region, or the region that can actually strengthen its position, is well within East Asia.
Just to expand on that a little bit, China historically has generally stayed away from getting involved in international matters, certainly far beyond its borders. But we've seen a change from that recently when it comes to things like the conflict in the Middle East and the war in Ukraine and so on. Where does China stand on that, and what do you make of their positions?
Well, the result of that is actually a combination of two factors. As China grows in its economic ability and capacity, there is that possibility that China has actually produced more than what it can internally consume within the context of a double circulation economy. But then, as and when China has that surplus capacity, China has to export abroad. And China has always gained tremendously by exporting its goods all over the world. And as a result of which, you have countries that are actually preparing the possibility of erecting tariff walls, very high tariff walls, whether it's in Europe, in developing countries, in order to prevent the possibility of Chinese dumping.
We've seen China and Russia develop a closer relationship, not just economically, politically as well. What do you think is China's motivation for that?
Well, China, under President Xi Jinping, has defined itself not just as a trading state, but also a national security state, because every kind of supply chain of China, in fact, this applies to the supply chain of almost every other country in the world, especially after the experience of the pandemic a few years ago, that you are always vulnerable to external shocks. As a result of which, China is trying to strengthen its relationship with Russia, which is primarily a petrol-producing country that can ensure its energy supply. And China has actually extracted and bought a lot of petrol and LNG from Russia, and is increasing its reserve in this energy sector in order to prevent the possibility of any energy shock, especially given what is happening now in the Middle East, that is completely shaped by the dynamics of war.
Good to talk to you, Phar Kim Beng, joining us there from Kuala Lumpur. Thanks very much.
Thank you.